Hello everybody, welcome back. Today it's all about a book review and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the Player's Handbook. This is what I'm going to review. And when I say review, it's probably not review, it's probably like talk to what's in the book and what's going on here to my level of understanding. So that's really what my intention was today rather than anything else. I'm going to put up a poll while I'm going through this. So feel free to respond. Don't need to feel you don't have to be self-conscious about the question I'm putting up here, because I've never actually played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Ed Edition. I kind of played Second Ed Edition, but I've never played First Ed Edition. So it's not like I can talk as if I played this game, because that's not the case. So do not feel bad when you answer no, I haven't played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Ed Edition, because I haven't either. Okay, that's all right. It's fine. How's it going, Jack? How are you? 2E Player's Handbook and Monster Manual, if time permits. Probably not today, but I will be doing that in the future, Jack. We will be going over certainly the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master Guide. I've actually already gone over the Monster Manual for Second Ed Edition, but we'll see it. We may revisit it. I don't know. I don't know if I did a particularly good job the first time around. Who knows? And to born, how are you? Okay, so grab some food, some drink. Make sure you're comfortable, and we'll get on with this so that you can see what I have for you today. So where are we? We are here, and I think we're almost ready. Make sure my notes are in front of me. Okay, cool. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. This is actually a book review, or a sort of a look through an old book. This is official Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the Player's Handbook, and I thought it would be nice to go through and have a look at the book, talk about the book a bit, and show you what you're missing, or what you're not missing in some cases. So yes, you can see this is quite old. It's been around a while. It was printed quite a time ago. So I'm going to have to be very, very careful as I flip through this, people, just because the reality is this is so old. The spine is coming apart. It's been 40 years at least, and there's a point where a book just can't hold on any longer. And this one is certainly getting there. Okay, so I will be flipping through this very, very slowly. As you can see, it is already coming apart a little bit. So the first thing I want to say is a patron and subscriber of the channel, Nacho Man, was very kind and sent me this. It's a surprising rule set system, or should I say, this is not really a rule set system, it's more of a guide. It's pretty clear this looks like more of a guide than a rule system as such. So this is a review of the Player's Handbook for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Ed Edition, with my honest opinion, pros and cons, and sort of a look at what they used to do and what they didn't do. Okay, so this is a thin book of original Dungeons & Dragons rules. All of the basic rules have been condensed into here, and a few other things added. It includes classes and races, spells, equipment, armor, weapons, and there's a lot of charts. You'll find there's charts up to Kaboo. The Player's Handbook was published by TSR and written by Gary Gygax. This is one of the first tabletop role-playing game books for a Player's Handbook, that is. So it's kind of ludicrous to compare it to modern publications. If we were to compare it to a modern publication, there'd be something wrong with us, because it would be completely unfair. Totally different technology. This is what the game was based off. There are 126 pages of frightening levels of complexity. The level of complexity is extremely high, and I would say there's a lot of tracking as well. So Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is not for the faint of heart as far as I'm concerned. The book was glue bound, and the spine is opening up, as you can see. It's had 40 years of wear and tear, so that's not too bad, considering. If it had been stitch bound and glued, maybe a bit different. The pages are a matte finish. The colour cover artwork suggests that this is actually a Dungeon Master guide rather than a player's handbook, much to my surprise, because it's got a wizard casting spells against some sort of flying gremlins. The interior artwork, you'll notice, is black and white line drawings, often with goofy or cartoon illustrations. So the illustrations are kind of primitive for what we're kind of used to, and clearly not from professional artists that worked in a classical medium like oils or acrylic or watercolour. But given what they were dealing with at the time, I would imagine this is sort of the budget that they had to deal with. Unfortunately, this book does have a table of contents, but there's no index, and it really does need an index, frankly. I find myself struggling to find stuff. Navigating through the book is actually quite difficult. The ability scores are explained, including detailed tables about how those ability scores work, but you'll find no ability modifiers, because ability modifiers worked completely differently, or they don't exist in many cases. And instead you have specific benefits based on the ability score included in the book. There are many occasions that the players of a character are referred to the Game Master or Dungeon Master to provide them with a specific character creation method or character option. So not everything that you needed, you had to refer to your Dungeon Master and Game Master for certain aspects. And if you are rolling, for example, ability scores, you could not just do it, because you had to find out which one your Dungeon Master or Game Master was going to use. All the rules for character creation are not included in the book, and some are referenced and referred to in the Dungeon Master guide. So there was certainly a level of control handed to a Dungeon Master rather than handed to players right out of the bat. Character advancement is different for all of the classes, with different levels of experience points required, which I understand is to help balance the gameplay, because some classes were considered stronger than others, but it was also very confusing and complex, and I remember using this in 2nd Ed edition, and I can assure you it is confusing. Experience points. So experience points are awarded based on gold coins rather than killing monsters to encourage the players to use alternative strategies. Of course, you can always do that, but it was set up deliberately so that there was no sort of you vanquish monsters and then you get your experience points. So you just needed to get the gold coins. The variety of playable races is small. You get human, elf, dwarf, half-orc, the halfling, the gnome, and the half-elf, which was the staple of stories during that period of time. Male and female characters are treated differently with regard to benefits, penalties, and restrictions, although I think if you're playing a female character, there was mostly restrictions. There aren't many classes, but you do get the following. You get the fighter, the cleric, the thief, the magic user, monk, and the bard is actually in the appendix. This is more than the traditional 4, so you did get a few. A few subclasses are included, such as the druid, the paladin, the ranger, the illusionist, and the assassin. One of the things I noticed about the subclasses and the classes, there are aspects of these classes that make a lot of sense, and a lot of that stuff has actually been lost from the modern game. Things like titles, I like the idea of titles, but specifically strongholds, followers, and a bunch of utility function. Clearly the classes weren't just built for combat, they were built to do other things as well. Many of the game mechanic tables aren't very clear or are complex with percentage values. I really struggled to understand what was going on here. There are many restrictions on the character creation process that are likely an attempt to balance the game, or possibly allow some sort of simulation gameplay that's more realistic. I guess that's sort of what I got the impression. But I still struggle to understand why it was included sometimes. I wouldn't say all the time. There were sometimes I was like, why include this? But it's pretty clear game balance and simulation was a big factor. Some game mechanics offer a brief explanation, while a few are covered in great detail, like hit points. You get paragraphs of how hit points are figured out and how they work and all that sort of stuff. Alignment is covered in detail. Hirelings, henchmen, because they were definitely a big part of the game. Encumbrance, experience points, poison, much to my surprise, morale, and successful adventures. What does a successful adventure look like? The book is dominated by spell descriptions and spellcasting information, which is not surprising or unusual for any player's handbook, frankly, and like most of the spells look very similar to what you're used to. A lot of the spells aren't included in modern Dungeons & Dragons that you find in this book, which isn't surprising because there are so many, and some do in fact feel quite redundant at times. The section on combat rules is actually very short or open to interpretation. I don't know that I would be able to figure out how combat worked from what was presented in the book, unless somebody explained it to me. There is very small text in the book, as you may have found and noticed. It's very frustrating for me because it's hard to read, and footnotes. There are footnotes that are even smaller than the basic text within the book. Clearly, they're trying to squeeze as much as they possibly can into the book. That's pretty obvious. The appendix consists of marginally useful lists of tables with spells, weapons, equipment, transport, livestock, provisions, herbs, clothes, armor, and religious items. I've always found that lists can be useful, but I would say marginally useful. And that's probably I would say the same thing for a lot of lists provided in players' handbooks. A few diagrams on alignment, planes of existence are included in the back in the appendix. You also get the Bard class or information in the back. Psionics is actually here, detailed in the appendix or appendices. There are far too many blank pages in the book. I was looking through this and I'm thinking, really, why? But this is probably the convention dust jacket. You have a page which is sort of just blank supposedly to help protect the pages. The content is organized in a chaotic mess. Frankly, it is chaotic to actually follow. And without someone knowing how to play it, I can't figure out how to play it from this book. If I were to read it and try to figure it out from this, I would struggle. I would need help. And I am 51, and I've played other versions of Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I can sort of interpret based off what my previous experience is, what I might be needing to do here, but yeah, it would be very difficult. I've actually learned a lot about early Dungeons & Dragons from this book. A lot of stuff that I feel like should not have been removed from the game, and a lot of things that I'm glad that they did remove from the game because I don't think I could have coped. But there it is. There is the Player's Handbook in all its glory, and there's also a blank page at the front. It's not a big issue, frankly, because it's quite common nowadays to have that sort of thing. So that is the Player's Handbook. I want to say a big thank you to Nacho Man, who sent me this book at his expense, and it is actually his book, not mine, since I've never played this game before. So I'm interested in what your opinion is of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook for First Ed Edition is. Please let me know in the comments section. Thank you to Nacho Man and my patrons. Hope this was useful to you, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. All right. Okay. Now, for those of you who are thinking, gosh, Fred was really quite brutal. Yeah, I suppose I was brutal, but I mean, it's a book that's 40 years old. I didn't hit the record button. Oops. I was supposed to record this so that it was an edited version. Oh dear. Oh, that's a problem. Okay. I wasn't expecting me to balls that up, but okay. So right now, don't get me wrong. I really like the book, and I'm probably going to refer to it a lot. I already have referred to it a lot. It's made it quite clear to me that there was a very different sort of mentality in terms of playing the game. And I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that. There are aspects to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Ed Edition that I actually wish we had not lost. It actually annoys me, and it still annoys me quite a lot. So yeah, so don't feel like I'm beating up on the book, because I'm definitely not doing that. It's just, yeah, the reality is it is a book that was printed back in the late 70s. Like, that's a long time ago. So technology in terms of printing, I mean, their book has probably lasted longer than a Wizards of the Coast book would. But I don't want to compare it to Wizards of the Coast, because that would be ridiculous. So this is the 6th printing, January 1980. But its first publication is 1978. It looks to me, 1978. I think that's what the book is trying to tell me. So let me go through the comments section. Hello, Wally. How are you doing, Wally? Wally DM has a YouTube channel, does puzzles and traps. I'm going to be hanging out with Wally for a Game Master Roundtable today. We'll do some homebrew stuff, so you should go and check out what we're doing in a few hours. For me, it is going to be roughly 4 hours, almost 4 hours. So that would be 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Chicago Central Standard Time is 7 p.m. 8 p.m. is Eastern Standard Time. New Zealand, it would be 2 p.m. Okay, so yes. Robert Moore, hello. How are you doing, Robert? Hello, all thumbs up, everyone. Remember to share and comment. Yes, I do appreciate it. The more that people comment and watch, it does help. Yep, for sure, absolutely. Wally, the spine of 1E books are notorious for the spines falling apart. Are they? Okay, my Monster Manual and Unearthed Arcana are shredded. Laugh out loud. So I had a look. The Monster Manual for First Ed Edition survives better than the Player's Handbook. Probably because the Player's Handbook was referred to more than anything else when it was being used, I would imagine. Yeah, 1E is really, really complicated. I really struggled. But I think that's because you're dealing with wargamers, and so Gary was used to charts. He would not have found this difficult, and people who were playing that sort of game back then were probably very much used to that sort of stuff. If you were coming into the hobby and you'd never played any tabletop war games, and then you're suddenly playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, a role-playing game, it would have been quite a bit of a culture shock to try to figure out how to deal with all of that. And also, too, I mean, the age group that were playing those sorts of games were sort of 16 and upward, 15, 16 upward. I mean, Dave Arneson was at least 15 or 16 when he was playing, and I don't know how old Gary was, but anyway. You were always fascinated with the Illusionist, but no one ever played one in your game. Ah, okay. So Wally has actually played BECME or Basic Dungeons and Dragons, and really Basic and BECME is combined, is sort of collected up and put into this book to a certain degree. Yeah, that's my understanding. Hi Scott, how's it going? When you look at these old books, you realize how simple 5e is. I prefer the old way. And it's funny because a lot of people add complexity to their 5e games. Like they strip out something that they don't like because they think it's too complicated, or they add in complexity. Poison, yes, there was a huge section on poison. I didn't realize. How's it going, Nacho Man? Nacho Man is a patron, and he is the one who sent me this book, and so I thought it would be good to look through it. And he recognized, of course you recognize the book, it's your book. I know you sent it to me. I got the package. So Wally prefers 5e. And so AD&D was too complicated for me, and which is why I played Beck Me instead. So my home group have been asking me to take a lot of the concepts from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that we liked and Beck Me and kind of make a game that's around that, which is what I'm kind of doing right now. So next week we'll continue that process. It's truly becoming far more complicated than I ever thought it would be. But then, of course, I always simplify things and think, it's a piece of cake. And then, of course, it takes longer. That's always the nature of things. So, yes. You've been going over the rules and the rules cyclopedia? Okay. AD&D is complicated, but then are we surprised? I actually think a lot of 5e Player's Handbook is based off Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because when you look at it and you think, okay, now I can see where if they got it for 5e, you know? To Born. But yeah, it has a lot more stuff. It does. There's a lot more going on there. Magic users and illusionists definitely squishy. Yes, when you look at it, it would have been hard to keep your wizard alive, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think wizards need to have some hurdles in front of them, and I like playing wizards. John B, QA, do you know what is named monster on Player's Handbook? I don't know what the named monster is. If anybody knows what the green gremlin-looking creature with wings that's flying around is, I had assumed that maybe it was a homunculus, but then I thought, no, maybe not. How's it going, Richard? How are you? You have the original cover? Okay. No, Nacho man. I'm not trying to do that all over your childhood. The reality is, I mean, gosh, Nacho. I was like in my 20s when I picked up. I picked it up before then. I picked up and started playing second ed edition and not really understanding what the heck I was doing. And I don't even know. I think we combined two rule systems to make it all work. I never understood second ed edition. So first ed edition I would have never been able to handle it. It would have just been like, oh, cool art. And that would have been about me. And I look at all these tables and I don't know what to do. Yeah. I was not the smart, nerdy person at school. Scott, it's clear to me we lost more than we gained with 5e. Yeah, I do feel like there are too many things that disappeared from the game. And I want to reiterate that the loss of strongholds, hirelings, henchmen, followers, and utility function, I was shocked at how much the classes could do that wasn't just hitting something and doing more damage in combat. There were a lot of utility stuff that just disappeared. It just wasn't there anymore. And I know you could say, yeah, but that's what the skills are for. They just don't. The skills just don't duplicate what was in here. I get the distinct impression. And there were things that I looked at and I was like, I wish they'd added more. I wish there was some other things they had added. Because your fantasy when you're playing a class is like, this is what I envisage them being able to do. Can they do it? And often you find they don't do it, which is like a bummer. Hi, Michael. It's an overview, yes. It's very much an overview, not really a review. You're very much correct about that. Review just means, what does it mean? Did I mean? Overview means nothing. Review means people might watch it. Dear. What do you got here, Richard? TSR made a solid book. Yeah, I mean, given the time, it's you got to consider all that. That's a big factor. Dear. What's that, Nacho? I brought these, played 3 or 4 games, then went back to basic. So, good to know, Nacho. It sounds to me that Wally did something similar. You need one big brain in the bunch to make it all work, eh, Michael? Yeah, I can believe it. I don't. Well, I never found anybody who wanted to play when I was younger. I know they talked about it, but nobody played it. And when they introduced me to the game when I was younger, I just thought it was nonsense. So you played before the hardbound. So yeah, so you what back to the original pamphlets, I would imagine. Oh, so you sprinkled AD&D in with your Beck Me Young Wally. Ah, okay. Thaco. Yeah, Richard Thaco. I think Thaco isn't the biggest issue with AD&D. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot going on here. Just the organisation of stuff in the book. It would have been much better if it had an index. That would have helped a huge amount. But then you look at Wizards of the Coast. They never put half the time they never put an index in their book. They did it in the Player's Handbook for 5e, but they didn't do it with anything else. But again, yeah, I'm going to have to stop talking with regard to 5e and 1e because it's not a good comparison. Meta Junkie, Frequency, how are you going? You started with basic book, D&D, and then added rules for from 1e to taste. Fair enough. Yeah, no, Thaco was second edition. Yes, exactly. Hit to roll charts. I was used to hit to roll charts in Warhammer, 40k, because that we use them all the time. That was quite common. So understanding that aspect is not difficult. Right, Fred. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I've heard people who've used Thaco and they said it made perfect sense because that's what we started out with. So yeah. Prepare, cook, and survive. Hello, how are you? No first book cover. No, this is the only book I have. I like I said, this was sent to me. Started with 5e, and I'm sure I will find out what Thaco and Beck Me means soon enough. Are you referring to the transition from from 5e to 1D&D, or the non-transition? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, Protect Mage. Yeah, that might be useful someday. Yeah, exactly. If red monster players steal Eye of Gem, then red too. I'm lost on the reference. I think that's referring to the Eidolon. Is it the Eidolon artwork? I think that's what you're talking about. Yeah. Speed factors on weapons, Richard. Yes, I did notice that. I didn't want to mention it. There are a lot of things I could have mentioned that I did not mention. Do you know what I mean? It's a very I'm very general about this. This is just an excuse for me to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but not 5e. Let's get real. That's where my head is at right now. I have always been in game groups that had to turn down players because lack of room at the table. I find that's not uncommon too. Yes. The one-page dungeon, precisely what I was looking for. Yes. So Wally has a website page, but he also has a YouTube channel, and his website page has a lot of free stuff you can download. Yes, the Game Master Roundtable is at 2 p.m. New Zealand daylight time for us. It'll be standard time if you're in North America. And I will look. Give me a second. I will find, because Wally put it up. He scheduled it on his channel, so I can find that for you and put a link in the chat right now. It's going to redirect you to it at the end of the live stream anyway, and I will try to remember to stick it into the comments, the community tab as well, for those of you who want to know. What were the topics again, Wally? I don't remember. What are we talking about in a while? Before we go, because I've got about half an hour before I probably should get off. So I kind of want to look at a few things. I'm going to have to take my glasses off because the print is so small. My glasses don't help me in the slightest. Hello, Matt. How are you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at this book. And there's a few things I wanted to point out that, frankly, I am shocked they decided they did not want to include in 5e. Like, why do that? So, taking my glasses off because I'm going to have to stare real close at some of this text. And somebody's going to say, you get better glasses, Fred. The problem is I found that the corrective lenses they wanted to give me weren't going to help. It's one of those weird things. This is a product of your eyes get too old that corrective lenses don't work. There are some days where even these things don't work if I need to drive that well. Basic, expert, companion, master, immortal refer to the original box sets. Yeah, tonight's round table equals. You're going to tell us, yeah, you remind me what it is. You do the work. I know you're at work right now. You probably shouldn't be typing in. There is a table of charts. So it gives you in the, I suppose it's kind of like an index. It's the kind of index the tables and charts right throughout the book. So that's sort of just after that's part of the contents page. I suppose you could say that is some kind of index, but there's so many things going on here. It really would have been helpful if they had indexed things, particularly spells. Trying to find spells, pain in the butt, really was. But there are so many of them too. Homebrew legendary magic items, monster. We're gonna make it, yeah, homebrew monster, homebrew trap, and a homebrew shop or inn. You know, dude, I don't want to do a shop or an inn. Can we make a pub? Can we make a tavern, man? Can we do a tavern? We did a shop last time. I just feel like it's time for a tavern, dude. It's time for a tavern. Didn't you say shop, inn, or tavern? I was actually ignoring the shop and the inn, Wally, and I was just looking at the tavern. I just opened up my copy of AD&D Player's Handbook and had forgotten that there were armor class adjustments for each weapon. Yeah. Gosh, it was, yeah, that's a big loss. Can you imagine the tracking required for that? Anyway, so let me just go past some of the stuff that's here. Ability adjustments. So here's one of the things I thought was interesting is, so ability adjustments is on page 9. And you know how we're used to the modifiers. There were hit probability modifiers included, but they looked very different. Do you know what I mean? There was even some for damage, and they were different from the hit probability modifiers. So if you had a strength, if you had an ability score of between 8 and 16, there was no modifier involved at all. No modifier at all. But outside of those ranges, you would get pluses or minuses. If it was lower, you would get minuses, and if it was higher than 16, you get a plus. But so the highest you really see is something like a +3. That was it. That you wouldn't get +5s, +6s, or anything like that. It tapered out at that point, which I thought was interesting. Clearly, they decided that you had to move quite a way out of the mid-range to be getting a significant benefit in terms of a modifier to hit. And that would probably apply to our to hit modifiers or our modifiers for abilities. That's probably what that bit is. So they did have modifiers that were just kind of different. A House of Ill Repute. Hello, Todd. Todd is also a patron. Welcome. Yes, I did. You bring your own pub, inn, tavern, or shop idea. We won't be building it together. Each will introduce our own. That's good. I'm going to get into a lot of trouble, mate, because I've already picked the name of the pub, and it's a real pub in New Zealand that I kind of used in a game. So I thought I would do that. And I've picked the name of the pub, Wally, based on the fact that it is an appalling name. What do you got here, Fred? Different classes rolled on different hit tables mattered. Yeah, there is a lot of variation there, I noticed there. The fighter was better with sword than the thief, even if both were proficient and had the same stats. Yeah, so proficiency did exist, but you didn't have so much a proficiency bonus, I guess. But I did see reference to proficiency. There is such a thing. Imagine if you had a D&D Beyond for Beck Me Advanced and a Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2E. It would be an interesting thing to have happen. I agree. I'm kind of curious if anybody's ever done it. I think somebody has. So what I did notice is with the different abilities, you get a rundown of each ability and what they represent and what they measure, and it's quite detailed. I was looking at this and I'm like, so instead of having skills, they had to build it all out in the abilities. So they go into a lot more detail with regard to, how you would use strength, and there were tables and charts that explained the benefits around that. Same with intelligence. There was a lot. There were some aspects where I was looking at it and think, kind of short on the detail, and then other times it's like there's way too much. There's way too much. So, yes. But I don't even really want to look at the race section. I could, but I feel like it's a can of worms. What's going on with the races? I'm much more interested in commenting on the classes and what they did with the classes, frankly. So I thought what I would do is I would point out some of the things I spotted in here with the classes that we don't really have now. You had non-proficiency penalties. Yeah, and I mean, it's actually, 3.5 had penalties for not being trained and stuff if you used it. Well, it's not a good. I think it was -5 or something in 3.5. Different classes roll on. Yeah, so hang on. Pale Rider. Hello, Pale Rider. How are you doing? I had the book and the action figure of that wizard. Oh, did you? Saving throws varied according to classes and type, and you had to try to resist. Yeah, try to resist. Yeah, I think saving throws... I feel like it's always been kind of different for all of them, but yeah, there's definitely an extra level of complexity. I think there was a non-proficiency penalty. I don't know that there was actually a proficiency bonus. I don't think it was called that. There were bonuses and so forth, but I don't think it was called a proficiency bonus, which is semantics, frankly. Right, Fred? It's just semantics. But, yeah. There were bonuses that kind of fitted, worked in the same way, as far as I could tell. Okay, so let's have a look here. Whole bunch of restrictions on what you could and could not do with your different classes. And some handy tables that sort of try to simplify things too. But it's not sort of all in one place. Now, cleric. I was looking at the cleric and I noticed that the druid seemed to get more play time in terms of what they explain or what you could do with a cleric. So only humans will normally have clericism as their sole class. Thus they are the only cleric with unlimited advancement and level. So to give you an idea, a cleric could go from level 1 to level 29. Like we used to, not level 1 to 10, but level 1 to 29. There's also a table for clerics that goes from level 1 to 11, and then it taps out. So there's two tables. One was to sort of show the progression in terms of spell casting, and the one that showed the progression in terms of experience points. It's kind of odd to see that. I think the reason for that is because unless you played a human, you could not go to level 29. Do we need to keep that? I don't know if we really need to keep that. What's that? Proficiency. Okay, what's that? Meta Junkie. It's page 37. Dwarves had natural magical resistance, or magic resistance. I believe possibly. Now, cleric. So it makes it clear that the cleric is really a fighter. That they are a melee combatant. And I kind of think we kind of lost part of that somewhere along the line. It's a little bit weird. It talks about using potions. Now, where is it? Oh, here we go. Level 8, cleric. Okay, this is what you get. You automatically attract followers as a cleric at level 8. We need that back. We really do. And also a place of worship. So you get a place of worship, a building of not less than 2,000 square feet in floor area with an altar, a shrine, chapel, etc. These followers are fanatically loyal and serve you without pay so long as the cleric does not change deities or alignment. These followers number between 20 and 200. Wow. Okay. So 2d10, and then there's a multiplier of 10. Okay, so you roll 2d10 and you multiply that by 10. In addition, there will be followers who are men at arms, and your referee will relay the types and numbers at the appropriate time. So there were guidelines in the Dungeon Master Guide for that. Do you know what I mean? I really like this aspect of the game where you're not a wandering hobo for your entire career as an adventurer. You know, there's a point where you put down roots, and I like that. How's it going, Spirit Wolf? How are you? I'm losing my voice. I'm going to have to put a lozenge in it so that I don't lose it completely. And if I got one here, yes I do. Oh. Ho, 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 ho. Next, cleric at level 9. You're now a high priest or high priestess, whichever you might be. And a cleric has the option of constructing a religious stronghold. This fortified place must contain a large temple, cathedral, or a church of at least of no less than 2,500 square feet on the ground floor. So that's just part of your stronghold. You have to have a cathedral or a temple or a church. It can be a castle, a monastery, an abbey, or the like. I love that aspect of the game. I've talked about this before. Why take that away? Is it because, frankly, nobody wants to play the high-end game? Maybe that's the case. But I like that aspect of it. That's one of the things that sort of stood out for me for the cleric. There's a few things with the druid too, which I'll point out in a second, but hang on. Multiclassing was going up differently, humans versus non-humans. Humans are one class at a time, non-humans 2 or 3 at a time at once. So multiclassing much harder to do in first ed edition too. Like it would not have been very easy to actually pull off. Now the druid, I want to read out some of the things that they got. So in connection with your nature worship, druids have certain innate powers which are gained at higher level. At third level, innate at first circle, I'm not quite sure what that means, but you could identify plant type. That's all it said. It just said you identify plant type, third level. Identification of animal type, you can identify animals. Identification of pure water, so you know when something's pure. There does not appear to be any modifiers involved. You just did it, as far as I can tell. Correct me if I'm wrong. I like that aspect of a game. There's another one here. Power to pass through undergrowth areas, so undergrowth or tangled vines, thorns, briars, patches, without leaving a discernible trail at a normal movement rate. So in other words, you can move through difficult terrain of that type and you wouldn't be hampered and you wouldn't leave a trail. And that's really cool. I like that aspect as well. Do you see that in a druid? Do we see it? I'm trying to remember if we do. Have I missed it? Have I forgotten? I haven't played that many druids in 5e. What's that meta? You have page outlines the non-proficiency penalties. Okay. It is interesting to see that the cleric only starts with 2 proficient weapons. They were cool differences beyond spells. Yeah. If you didn't get proficiency with every single weapon at first level. That's one of the things you do notice. Yeah, no home base meant you couldn't keep going up in levels. This is one of the things I thought was very, very interesting. And the benefits is that you can now produce an income. But also too, protecting your stronghold was part of the top end of the game. Now, 7th level Druid. Here we go. The following additional powers are gained at 7th level. Immune from charm spells cast by any creature basically associated with the woodlands. Dryads, Nixie, whatever that is. I can't. Sylphies? Okay. The ability to change form into 3 times per day. So they gave you a restriction of 3 times per day. And they can become them in all aspects save the mind, a reptile, bird, or a mammal. So your mind was not gone. This is how essentially wild shape. This is wild shape for those of you who wanted to know. Each type of creature form can be assumed but once per day. So you can assume any particular animal form you like, but once per day. Get to do it 3 times. The size of the creature form assumed can vary from as small as a bullfrog, a jaybird, or a bat, or as large a large snake, a large eagle, or a black bear. About double the weight of the druid. Each assumption of a new form removes from 10% to 60%. Okay, so you lose a few hit points by doing so. If only they has sustained prior to changing form. Ooh, I see where they have their problem. You look at the older game and it sets in a few things in place that really complicate things. So druids have their own secret language, of course, which we still sort of see in the game right now. And in addition to their other tongues, alignment common and others known. So there's a bunch of different things that you can get. You get other languages as well, which I kind of like the fact that you can get more languages over time. There's a section on melee which I won't really go into because it's not that interesting. The inability to wear armor of metal. You have to wear something else. So this, I think that's the druid. The things that I saw that stood out the most for me. I may have missed something, but those are the things that stood out for me. And they've got their own tables. There's 2 of them. The fighter, what do you got? Oh, hi JP, how are you doing? I cut my RPG teeth on AD&D in the early 80s. Was that first ed edition or second ed edition, JP? I know we've talked about it before. So this is one of my mates that I play with, JP, or Jean-Paul. And I keep talking about wanting to take some of what was in the older game and bring it into a newer game, quite a lot. and more it's becoming something we want to do. A great system with strongholds, followers, and hirelings as part of the game for most of the classes. Bring this feature back. You know it's going to happen. We already talked about it. It's going to happen. But it's not the only thing I want to bring back. I want to bring back a whole lot of other things. How come D&D is going mainstream? Am I one of the cool kids now? I think D&D is going mainstream because it's become easier for people to understand how to play it. And there's a lot of things that come into play, right? You had the Satanic Panic, that got it going, but then, it's being portrayed by more and more people in social media and in media in general, so people are being drawn to it. Now they know what they're missing. Keep up of home calls always cost more than the place created an income. See, here's the thing for me, Fred. I don't like that aspect. I know that there is an aspect to that, but yeah, it's not something that it doesn't make sense. Rationally, it doesn't make sense. The only point to having the stronghold is that it would make money, and it should make money. And the reason you would have to have that money is there are things that need to be done. Do you know what I mean? Anyway. Did Druid start out as a cleric? I can't remember. Oh, I can't tell too. And it will take me forever to find it out. Somebody here will probably remember. It was, yeah, so Druid was a specific class of cleric. You had to meet the higher stat requirements. How's it going, Scott? Neutral alignment. Ives clueless. Okay, all right, let me just talk, let's show you, let me talk very briefly about the fighter. I need to be faster because I'm going to have to go pretty shortly. So here is what I see that sort of stands out for me. You get a bunch of stuff that makes you good at fighting, for sure. But 9th level, you become a lord, and you can establish a freehold. This is done by building some type of castle or clearing the area in a radius of 20 to 50 miles around the stronghold, making it free from all sorts of hostile creatures. So you have to clear the area. Yeah, you're going to go on a rampage. Whenever such a freehold is established and cleared, the fighter will automatically attract a body of men-at-arms led by an above-average fighter. These men will serve as mercenaries so mercenaries means that you have to pay them, so long as the fighter maintains his or her freehold and pays the men-at-arms. Collect a monthly revenue of 7 silver pieces for each and every inhabitant of the freehold due to trade, tariffs, and taxes. So I like that aspect of it. I thought that was really cool. But there's not much else. Now, I've talked with JP about what it was like to be a soldier, and there's things that I feel like should be here that we don't include, that isn't included here in the new game and in the old game. Now, Paladin, but I still like that. Paladin, here we go. Paladin was sort of a type of fighter. A very powerful one at that too, because you needed to have a lot of experience points to level up. You can detect evil up to 60 feet away, as often as desired, but only when the Paladin is concentrating on whatever the presence of evil and seeking to detect it in the right general direction. Your saving throws had a +2 on the dice. Okay. Immune to all forms of disease. We know about this. The ability to lay on hands either on others or on his or herself in person. Cure wounds. Heals 2 hit points of damage per level of experience. The ability to cure wounds of any sort, and this can be done once per week for each 5 levels of experience the Paladin has attained. So you didn't get it quite as much. I think that the cure disease feature is way too strong in 5e, because it's a no-brainer. If you ever get anything, the Paladin can get rid of it. Do you know what I mean? And probably do it better than the cleric, which is ridiculous. Protection from evil, you would get that as well. I can't remember what level it is. Is this level 7? I think it's level 7 you get these things. Furthermore, 3rd level, gains the power to attract undead, and devils and demons as if he or she were a 1st level cleric. And this power goes upwards with each level of experience. So why would you be attracting them? I'm not sure. So you can vanquish them. At level 4, or at any time thereafter, the Paladin may call for his warhorse. This creature is an intelligent, heavy warhorse. So you could call for your warhorse, but it wasn't like fine steed. Do you know what I mean? If a Paladin has a holy sword or a special magic item with which your referee is aware of, there's some, what's this? This is some sort of special benefit. Okay, it's a circle of power within, is it 1 foot in diameter? Okay, all right. 9th level, 10th through to 20th level, experience gained. Okay, so that they then explain about experience points. They tell you what you get: armor, shield, weapon, and any. Okay, all right. So that's interesting. That's interesting. There's a lot going on with the Paladin. The Paladin section is huge. It just goes on and on. You never attain wealth. So that's some aspect of the game. And it looks to me Paladins could have henchmen of lawful alignment, but you don't look like you have it doesn't look like you get a stronghold as a Paladin. I could be wrong, but it looks like that's the case. What have we got here? I am... we used to penalise for casting spells while wearing armour. Yes, that's true. A druid started as a cleric, and then at a 10th level, I think it was the player could decide to follow the druid path. Thank you, Pale Rider. Yeah. Kings and queens can offer it, or a baron, yeah. Absolutely, Wally. Yeah, hard to meet those requirements. Same with the paladin. What do you got here, JP? Both 1D&D, 1E and 2E, Fred. Okay, I had some amazing adventure modules that Wizard Coast have just recycled in the last version, as you know. Yeah, no, we have, and we probably wind up doing something like that again. More than likely, I suspect it's very, very, very likely that we'll do that. Now, the Ranger. Here's what I find interesting about the Ranger. Ranger surprise. So you had a better chance of surprising your enemy as a Ranger. Do we really have that in 5e? I don't think we do. When fighting humanoid type creatures of the giant class, you gain. So you're going to benefit from actually fighting them. You were actually good at fighting giants. It was part of the class, and it stipulated in detail exactly what that was. Next was, what else was there here? Tracking is possible both outdoors and underground in dungeons and like settings. So underground, the ranger must have observed the creature to be tracked within 3 turns. So 30 minutes, okay? 30 minutes, and then you could track them down if you wanted to. Creature actions. It gives you percentages now here for tracking and stuff like that. Outdoors, it explained how that would work. There was not this requirement that you have to pick forests and mountains. You know, you get 2. Favoured terrain, it didn't work like that. You know, it was all of that because you would be going everywhere. So at 8th level, Rangers gained limited druidic spells. Okay, and then there's another jump at 17th level. 9th level Ranger, limited magic use of spell abilities. 10th level Rangers, this was now a Ranger Lord. You are able to employ all non-written magical items which pertain to clairvoyance and clairaudience, telepathy, and ESP. Also at 10th level, each Ranger attracts a body of 2 to 24 followers. Note these henchmen, once lost, can never be replaced. So you do not lose your followers, people. Although mercenaries can be hired, of course. But the followers are different. And the rules around followers in the Dungeon Master Guide. Almost top of the hour, I'm totally aware. The following restrictions and strictness. Okay, so changing alignment had consequences. And there were restrictions on the types of men-at-arms you could hire, which is basically hirelings. And you could never have more than a certain number of rangers with you as well. Or rangers, actually a certain number of rangers together. I think the thing is, if you had a party of at least too many rangers, it would just become a bit too easy, maybe. Maybe that was the rationale behind it. Because they do very well when they're exploring. Rangers may own only these goods and treasures, which they can carry on their person or place, or on their mount. All excess wealth is either communal or donated. You got to get rid of your wealth. That'll go down well. For those people who say, "Oh my gosh, What do you do with gold? Well, you won't have it, don't worry. Your paladins rangers didn't get to establish a stronghold. We would make a group stronghold, and these types of characters would get a place to lay their head. Yeah, I noticed this. Now, what else is here? The magic user. The magic user's next. Look, there's a lot of information on the magic user, and it's actually really hard to read through. So I'm not even going to go there, even though I love the magic users. The illusionist. There's a little bit of sort of dashed lines things, so it actually points out a few things, which is kind of cool. The illusionist. All potions not restricted to fighters only. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I'm assuming that you could use them. Illusionist scrolls and magic user scrolls with which contain spells used by illusionists. All rings, so you could use all rings. Okay, so there must have been restrictions on using rings. Yeah. Oh, look, Spirit Wolf, if you need to go, not a problem. The rangers could make a stronghold. It would probably, I suppose the ranger's stronghold would look a little different. Rod of cancellation, no. Magic daggers. So, yeah. I would say, I suppose the depth of the illusionist and the magic user is in their spells, right? That's because they could do so many things with those. The thief, which is now your rogue. Functions. These are the sorts of things you could do as a thief. That is, and when did you get them? Does it state here? Opening locks, picking locks, finding and removing traps, moving silently, hiding in shadows. These are the functions of the thief. So, picking locks and explains how you go about doing this. So we already have this sort of thing. Opening locks, including finding out how to open, slide, puzzle locks and so forth. Finding and removing traps, moving silently, hiding in the shadows. So this is all pretty standard. You've heard about this before. It goes over moving around, backstabbing, which is like your sneak attack now. Listening at doors. The Thieves' Cant was a thing back then as well. You've got the burglar at level 4. So the ability to read 20% of languages. So there's a lot of percentage stuff in here. Deciphering magical writings and utilizing scrolls of all sorts. So that's sort of like use your magic device sort of concept, I guess. And the table for them goes to level 12. And there's another one which is related to 17. I'm not entirely sure what that's all about. Plus racial adjustments. Okay, all right. So there's two for two different purposes. Still very confusing at times, I have to say. The assassin. Hearing noise, climbing walls, reading languages. So there's a lot of explanation about how you go about doing this. They've gone into quite a lot of detail in the actual class itself, much to my surprise. You're following along with your copy. I am on page 29 right now. Attunement was artifacts only. Okay, all right. Paladins donated 10% tithing of their income, and rangers had to get rid of all of the excess wealth. I always struggled with all of that charity. JP, I totally understand. Since I've played with you before, I know where you're at with that one. I really should finish up, but I'm just looking at, there's really not a lot that I want to say about the assassin. Not really, no, frankly. There's a lot of information. There's a bit of information on guild mastering and guild masters. The monk, I was surprised to see the monk in here. I wasn't expecting that. I've gotten the impression that the monk has always been awful, but you know, they're hard to kill in 5e. I know that. Find, remove traps is an aspect of them. Opening locks, moving silently, moving in shadows, hear noise, climb walls. They feel like they are another version of the thief or rogue. Going up to level 17. Yes, it looks like they go up to level 17. The ability to speak with animals. The ability to mask the mind from ESP. 5th level, monk. Not subject to disease of any sort. Okay. The ability to self-induce... appear dead. You can actually play possum. You can heal at level... Really, you can heal your body at level 7. The ability to speak with plants as druids do. Beguiling charm, suggestion spells, so that they might not affect you. So there's telepathy and mind blast. Are you shitting me? No, you're not. It's a thing. Okay, they had it. Guys, quest spells. The last gained. Okay, so what's the last ability gained here? Oh, it's vibrations. Quivering palm. Quivering palm looks very complicated. I'm not even going to try to go into this. My gosh, there is so much around the monk. The monk section is massive. Armor, magic items. Okay, all right. And then we kind of, like, I'm not even going to open up and look at the bard section, people, because the bard was like a Frankenstein monster with regard to classes, which I suspect is why they put it in the appendix rather than anywhere else. Okay, so let me end this poll. So yes, a lot of people here have played AD&D 1E. I'm not one. I haven't played it. I'm just really interested by it, frankly. I actually am very, very interested by it. So I'm part of the 30% who said no. So I can't even say sort of, because it was really second ed edition for me. Now you have to dig out your books. So I've been wanting for ages to drag some of the old stuff into modern Dungeons and Dragons for so long. So yeah, that opportunity is getting closer and closer. I feel like this is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to looking at the Dungeon Master Guide for AD&D, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Ed Edition. It looks horrific in some sections and really, really interesting in others. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can see that now. But in any case, I should probably end this. But I'm going to say a big thank you to everybody, like I normally do, because I should. I want to thank all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. I do appreciate it. I want to thank Nacho Man, who provided the book so that I could actually go over it with you. And I really look forward to going through the Dungeon Master Guide in the future. So thank you, Nacho Man. I want to thank everybody who took part in the poll today, everybody who was in the chat. Thanks a lot for commenting. I do appreciate it. Or rewatching if you just listened and watched. That's cool too. Rewatching this and the edited videos and the, you know what all that sort of stuff. I don't care now. I'm moving on from that. So you know my normal saying, like, you know, wherever you are in the world, okay, wherever you are in the world, look after yourself, your family and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.